Kevin Brown was born and raised in Preston, but has been living in Bath since 1978. And I don't want to talk too much about his career in music here, because that's what we'll be doing throughout the evening. But as a singer, songwriter and guitarist, he's been making superb music for decades. In the words of Mark Knopfler, he's so much more than just a great slide player. But a great slide player he is, and we'll be hearing a lot of that tonight. So let me introduce our guest for the evening, Kevin Brown. Now, before we start, I'd like to just show a very short little bit of film. Please, Stuart. First, Kevin, who was that wonderful singer we just heard?
That was a musician called Watermelon Slim, who is a friend of mine. He lives in Clarksdale, and we performed together nearly 20 years ago now in London, and that's how I first met him.
I see.
And he's a great talent. I mean, not many people can sing like that.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And then the gravestone here, Robert Johnson. Could you tell me a little, who was Robert Johnson?
Robert Johnson was known throughout the South as the king of the Delta blues singers. But he was also, as were so many of them, he was also a highly distinguished and original and influential guitar player. He was a great singer, a great guitar player, and a fantastic performer, a wonderful recording artist as well. You know, he was an all-rounder, one of the first great all-rounders.
And I believe slide guitar was his speciality.
It was, and he was one of the first people to influence me and to inspire me and to make me become incredibly inquisitive as to how you achieve this, you know.
And I think on your first album, the first piece of music that we heard was a piece of slide guitar recorded outside this cottage. Could you tell me a bit about the cottage?
Sure. So I was teaching in London, don't laugh, and I was on the pub rock circuit in the evening, teaching by day, and I fell by the wayside, and I needed to get out, really. And I would visit my friend here in Stuart, who's here tonight, in Rose Cottage in Shoscombe. And when the time came to escape and achieve some kind of salvation, Rose Cottage was where I went to in 1978. Yeah, and that was it there. It was a self-sufficiency project, and I had the little room at the top on the right-hand side.
I see. And the very first sound on your very first album was a piece of slide guitar that you recorded.
Yeah,
just under an apple tree.
That's right. So just a few yards in front of the front door there was an apple tree, and that provided shade, and that's where I'd often sit during the day. And typical of me, I would always record everything that I ever did, because I can't remember things. and so I have to make recordings, and then I have a record. I have, you know, a journal of where I'm at, and I did record. I took a whole batch of recordings on my little cassette, which is actually on the table. I brought it. It's on the table. You can still see the tape recorder there. And this is it. Yeah. Oh.
And this.
This is it.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So just jumped the gun there. Yes. And so I think this music that is bursting to get out is the very first piece of music, as you say, recorded under the apple tree. So could we hear that, Stuart? Okay. And that piece of music was fixed to the front of the first demo recording that you made, which got you your first contract with Ensign Records.
That's right. It was indeed. In fact, that's not quite accurate. It was when I decided to make the record after doing the demos in Bath. Then we added that little, so we didn't do it originally on the demo. So the demo of Diamond Ring was what I touted around London, and I was eventually signed to Ensign Records.
And how did that recording session go with Ensign?
With Ensign, well, it started off okay because they gave me a small budget, and I was able to create demos in Crescent Studios in Walcott Street. So I could invite my local friends in, and we could get my songs ahead and see how, you know, knock them into shape. That went really well. I was really pleased with that. And then when I eventually signed the deal, and well, they were funding that then, they brought in a producer called Jeffrey Haslam, who I was really okay with because he'd just been working with Aretha Franklin. And the work that he'd done was incredibly impressive, you know. So Ensign Records brought in the guy's name who I've immediately forgotten, Jeffrey Haslam, that's right. And he brought in some brand new musicians. Unknown to me, Ensign Records had said to Jeff, the producer, can we beef it up a little bit? So make them a bit stronger, a bit more dynamic, a bit more in your face than the demos that he's been recording in Walcott Street in Bath. So that's what it is. But I didn't know this. So, you know, sadly, by the end of the whole of the recording process, I was so unhappy with what had happened. They'd lost all that touch and that sensibility of the demos. And they realised that as well, you know, they could see, and I was desperately unhappy because I'd waited, you know, and it was my dream come true, really. So yeah, that was the end of, never released.
And the song that we as you say, led off the album that wasn't, and the demos, was Diamond Ring.
It was indeed, which I recorded at David Lord's in the very first version of Crescent Studios. Yeah.
Do you think? Could you play?
Yeah.
That song just now?
David had a 4-track reel-to-reel recording studio, which was 2 tracks more than any of us had ever seen before, you know, and it was just the most marvellous facility where you could maybe add something to it after you'd recorded it. But we did it mainly live anyway. told me she wanted a diamond ring. So young and pretty, I get her everything. But you can't buy love on the way. It's love and buy everything. You can't buy love on the way. It's love and buy everything. Well, I bought a pistol, it was a 44. To get that ring I had, rob a jewelry store. But you can't buy love on a ring. It's love and unbuyable thing. But you can't buy love on the way. It's love and unbuyable thing. You know the police called me, took me to the jail. Mean old girl would not pay my bill. She can't buy love on the ring. It's love and unbuyable thing. Can't buy love on the ring. It's love and unbuyable thing. Boom.
That's fabulous. And although the album was aborted, the one that you'd signed to do with Ensign Records, you didn't give up, did you? And I think this was the result of your perseverance. Could you tell me something about this?
So, luckily, we had evidence of these demos that I'd been making, you know, before going in to make the masters at Ridgeform Studio, and I kept coming back to the demos and realizing how precious they were and how there's no way we could have recreate those with any musicians anyway, and they were done in such beautifully relaxed situations with local musicians here in Bath who'd been invited to their first probably ever recording sessions, and the whole thing was incredibly organic and healthy, you know. So I was lucky enough to be able to go back to these and actually use them to form the basis of a project that was going to be done my way. So I continued to use those people and recorded some more tracks in the similar vein, in the similar fashion. And you know, I think a year later I'd had enough tracks to put out my first ever record, which was my dream.
And you actually funded it and pressed it yourself?
That's right, yeah. I was painting, I was still living at Rose Cottage, and I was painting our neighbours' houses, do you remember? And working in the Hat and Feather, you know, yeah, anything. I'd do anything to pay for these recording sessions. But I also got some help from the government because the Enterprise Allowance Scheme was launched at that time to help new businesses, and I signed up and I got that. So I was able to have a grant from the government and keep on working. Yeah.
And so that came out in 1983. And you print, how many copies did you print? 500. And I believe one of them, or at least a tape of the album, ended up on the desk of somebody rather important. Yeah, I didn't really want to release it myself because I know that's a lot of work. So before I did do that, I made cassette copies, and I sent these copies out to various people in London that I didn't know, but they'd just been recommended. And years after releasing it myself, that artwork was done in Walcott Street, by the way. Definition Wilson, they did that. In fact, the photograph of me was taken by Bob Draper, who used to be one of the key holders and here. And there's another person here tonight that I won't mention. Yeah, so that was printed in Bath as well. Sorry, I've gone off the track. Yeah. And one of the people that you sent the tape to was a man called Joe Boyd. That's right. So I'd heard about this guy, who'd set up this new label called Hannibal Records, and I did send him a copy. Didn't hear anything back until a few years later when I got a call from him. He said, "This thing has just come to the top of the pile on my desk. And tell me about it. Have you sold many? What's going on?" So I explained. He said, "Well, I'd really like to put it out and release it in the UK." And that came out then as that one. See, it's not fantastic. It's not going. No, is it not going? No. I know.
You keep trying. I'll keep. It was the pressing plant I used to have these done was in Lewisham, and I hired a little van from a van hire in Walcott Street next to the Bell. I don't know if you remember it, and it was really dodgy. And I had no idea how much weight 500 copies of Picking Good Dreams was going to be, and I barely made it back to Walcott Street. I tell you, the back was hanging, because I put them all in the back. It seems like we're there, are we there? So that's what came out under Joe Boyd on his label, Road Dreams.
Yeah, and not only did he bring out your first record, but then he gave you a contract to sign to record a new one.
That's right. The beauty of failing with Ensign was that I was forced into the deep end to go back and actually make this record myself with nobody producing, and I learned an awful lot in doing that. And Joe really liked it. He loved the way that record sounded, this one. So he said to me, "I'll fund the next one as well, and you can produce it," which was amazing. I mean, I didn't know much about producing, so it all worked out really well. Yeah.
And then, as well as while you were recording that album, you had an interesting adventure with a visiting American blues musician.
Yeah, there was a great record out at the time called The Gift. And it became very popular amongst all the blues fraternity in Britain. And I discovered it was by this guy, Joe Louis Walker. I loved his voice, I loved his guitar playing. And with the help of some friends of mine, we contacted his agency here in the UK with a view to, because he was coming over on tour, could I possibly be the support act on his tour? And we said, well, maybe, tell us about yourself. Can you drive? Yep. Okay. Can you count money? Yeah. Right. So I ended up driving Joe Louis and his band all around the United Kingdom, opening up for him and selling all his merchandise at the end of the gig. And some of mine, and yeah, it was wonderful. Yeah.
And wonderful, and I think there was one particular instance where there a review from the Times.
That was awful.
Yes, caused a bit of a stir in the van.
Yeah, we stopped. We'd had our breakfast at some hotel in North Wales, I think it was, and they were all knackered, you know. I had to then drive throughout the day, and we stopped at a tobacconist for some ciggies and stuff like that. And one of them brought a newspaper in. Amongst them was the Sunday Times or Daily Times, and they'd reviewed the gig for him a few nights before in London, and Joe hardly got a mention. It was all about me. Oh dear, they were glaring at me, you know.
But I think you won his heart back when you wrote a song about him, is that right?
Yeah. I used to love I'd sit every night and watch him play and learn, and he was so cool, such a great player. And these ideas came to my mind, hey Joe Louis, you know, and that's a good line and so forth. Until eventually I had enough ideas to create some verses. And I thought, well, would it be great if I sang this to him in praise of him? And maybe I could persuade him to allow his band into a studio with me, and I could record this for this album that Joe had offered to finance and allow me to produce. So I sang it to him, and he loved it. You know, yeah. He said, "Yeah, let's do that, man." So we went into a studio in London and recorded "Hey Joe." Oh God, have I got to play it now? Oh.
Yes. So we don't have him in his band here, but if you could give us a rendition.
A rendition. Yeah. It's been quite a day, hasn't it, Matthew? Eh?
Yeah, it's not ended. Gosh.
I just want to play, really. But, where have you been so long? Joe Louis, where have you been so long? You sound so good, I hope your time is cool. We've been around England, Scotland too. People in Wales are mad about you, Joe Louis. Where have you been so long? You sound so good, I hope your time is gone. If you're feeling tired, your feet won't move, the man you need to put you back in the groove is Joe Louis. say no.
And so that song appeared on the second album, the album that Joe had commissioned from you, and a lot of the influence on that album came from a trip you made to Austin, Texas.
Oh.
And you went there in search of the blues, but I think you discovered a lot more than just blues there.
Yeah, that was the best thing I ever did. I was living in Burlington Street. I'd come out, I'd moved down to Rose Cottage, and I was in Burlington Street. So I found somebody to look after my flat, and I sold everything I had. I had a Martin D35, a Renault 4, a Tiac 4-track I had, sold the whole lot, and I went on this journey. Yeah, I went on the trip of a lifetime. Landed in Boston and just headed south. Yeah.
And then the music, as I say, the music that you discovered there, it's not just blues, was it?
It was. I wasn't aware at the time until I got there how multicultural and multifaceted the music in Austin was, because it was so close to the Mexican border. It was so close to Louisiana, so it had this fantastic potpourri of gospel, blues, jazz, country, western swing, acoustic blues, electric blues. Yeah, I learned so much. You could just go from one bar and another and hear the finest quality of any of these genres.
And one of the songs on the album was very much about that, Southern Streets.
Oh yeah, so I came back. I mean, it was such a great trip for inspiration and content, you know, and material, and I really wanted to try and capture that free spirit that I felt was there, and this allowance that you can do anything you want, you know, because I didn't have a record label, I had nobody. I could do what I wanted, which is why I was there. I could go. It's still like that now, you know, really.
Well, shall we hear a little extract of that song
Southern Streets,
with illustrated a few of the photographs that you took during your trip?
My time in Austin, wow. My first night in there. Street. Fantastic, yeah.
And if we look again at one of those photos that we'd seen there, I think this truck has a story of its own. You arrived in Boston, didn't you? And then you made your way down to Austin. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I spent a little bit of time in New York, not much, then down to Washington, and then I headed over to Nashville. And on the outskirts of Nashville, I got dropped off on the Greyhound bus, and there was a diner there, and I popped in the diner, And I got talking to a young lady, and she was an English professional tennis player by, what was her name? Anne Hobbs. And we got chatting, and she was there to play in a tournament. She invited me to the tournament that night, which I went to, and I met some friends of hers, and they then introduced me to some writers who lived in the woods outside Nashville, because they'd kind of rejected the Nashville scene. And one of them said, my brother lives in Austin. They heard me play and said, you need to go to Austin, Texas. So I got on a Greyhound bus and down I went to Austin and hung out with his brother. But that was after, that wasn't immediately, because when I got there I had very little money left. And I said to I got off the Greyhound bus in the Austin bus station, and I said to the taxi driver, just take me to a bar, you know, that's close to an affordable motel. So he took me to the South Austin motel, which was opposite the Salt Creek Saloon, and that was the first slide that we saw earlier on. And so I'm sat in the Salt Creek Saloon Sunday night, about 6 o'clock. I'd virtually spent my last $10 on the motel opposite, and I had enough for a beer, and it was just me and that beer, and that was it. There was nobody else in there at all, figuring out what my next move was going to be after my night in the South Austin motel. And then walked a guy. Eventually we started talking, and he said, you want to come out for a toke? I said, yep. So out we went, and we became friends, and I played a song for him, and he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, I'll meet you at the motel tomorrow morning, go and have a good night's sleep, I'll pick you up. My roommate's just left me. He's just done a bit of a runner, and I'm looking for somebody. So he picked me up the next morning, took me to this place that he was renting. It was for two people, it was only him there. And we got up the next day, and he said, right, I've got to go to work. He said, there's the phone. Here's an Austin telephone directory. I'll be home at 5 o'clock. I would expect you to have a job. All right. Here's my keys. He left me some vehicle keys. I said, well, what's that? He took me outside, and that was it. It was a 1950 Dodge pickup, and that became mine, you know, all the time I was in Austin. Bless him. Philip West, I wrote a tribute to him on Sunny Side Up, the spirit of Philip West, yeah.
And the job you got was with a sign company.
Yeah, the Hollis Baker Sign Company. So I opened the telephone directory. My dad was a sign writer, and I could do very basic lettering, but I was pretty good at putting blank colours on a board ready for the letterman. So I thought, well, I'll try a few sign shops. So the first shop I rang, the Hollis Baker Sign Company. I said, my name's Kevin Brown. I'm looking for some work over here while I'm in. He said, where the hell are you from, boy? I said, I've just come over. And he said, Alice, that was his wife, come here, listen to this guy speak. So Alice came over. Oh, you sound so cute, she said. They'd just come back from England, and they loved English people. So I really struck lucky. I hit gold that day. He said, yeah, come on round. Let's have a look at you, see what we can do. So I drove that truck for the first time all the way across Austin to North Lemoore, and I met Hollis Baker, and he became my father figure. His family looked after me. They supported me, you know, and gave me work. And at night I'd go out in that truck listening to some of the coolest music you ever heard. Yeah.
And not only did you listen to some great music, but you played with some great musicians too, didn't you? Here's one of the bills that you played on.
So this is a classic handwritten Austin music poster of the time. And for those of you who are familiar with the writers that were around Austin in the late 70s and early 80s, will recognise some really big names there. Jimmy Gilmore, Butch Hancock. I toured with Butch in England. Later, again, I was his driver and opened up for him. Lucinda Williams. she and I worked together. Blaise Foley, the son of his father, actually, whose name I've forgotten. And Rory McLeod there, you know. Rory was up from Mexico. We were the only two English people in Austin at the time, because it was quite early days, really. People didn't travel much then. And at the bottom, towns, Van Zandt. What an education, can you imagine? And those were the people that I was hanging out with and learning from and picking with. So I was like a pig in you-know-what, mate, yeah. I can tell you.
And then when you came back to England, you completed the album, which went under the name Rust, and I believe it was quite a success.
Yes, it was nominated for the Best British Blues Album at the time. Again, everything was, you know, I was in control. Some great stories about that record being made, really beautiful. Have I answered your question?
You've answered that one, yes.
Oh, good.
But I believe my next question, one of the bands that you played with on there was one that you encountered in a pub in Oxford. Is that right? Oh,
quite a few tracks on here. So, this pub owner in Oxford had heard Road Dreams, and he rang me and said, "Would you like to come and play in our pub? We've got this great pub in Oxford, and they'll love you because this is all the kind of music that we play." So I drove up, yeah, and we became friends, and I met all the musicians that were in Oxford in this bar. It was called the Radcliffe Arms. Bob Moore was his name. And we formed a band. We sounded, I mean, the drum, well, it was wonderful. So we'd do gigs in the pub, and we'd do a few gigs around Oxford and so forth. So when the time came to, because I was continually writing, we went in the studio, and on this album, that Oxford band did Don't Quit, If I Had My Way, Meltdown. Yeah, some of the, yeah. So exciting.
And as well as getting good reviews, that album got you something else, didn't it? It actually got you a contract with a major label, Chrysalis.
So, do you know when Joe Boyd contacted me about, can I put this record out as Road Dreams, I realised I didn't know anything about the business or the industry, so I enlisted the help of a local guy here called Richard Hutchinson, and he helped secure the deal and the contract for Rust, which was my second album with Joe. And on the strength of Road Dreams and Rust, we felt we had enough foundation there, and the reputation was growing to start approaching major labels, because although these were great records, they didn't get much exposure. Exposure costs money, and none of these labels had it. I mean, did I put that out? No, Joe put that out. He didn't have any money, you know, just a big heart. So Richard Hutchinson managed to secure me a contract with Chrysalis Records, and it happened.
And this was a real contract with an advance.
Yeah.
And basically that's what you've been dreaming about from the start, right?
Absolutely.
And if I could just ask you, when was that start? When was the first time that you fell in love with the blues?
I remember it like yesterday. Yeah. It was 1964, maybe August 1964. I'd be 14. I've been playing guitar for a couple of years. My dad was downstairs watching telly, and he called me up. I was upstairs playing with my scale X strings, and he said, "Kevin, come and look at this, quick!" I ran downstairs, and there on the telly in black and white was this vision. And the sound that was coming out of the speakers in the television was unbelievable, because I'd only been used to Burt Wheaton, you know, and Lonnie Donegan and stuff. And what this was phenomenal. Muddy Waters, yeah. So this is what we actually sat and watched. I had fun in the band.
believe your dad asked you at that point, what's that he's playing with on his finger?
I'd seen it before. I'd seen people playing guitars with an object that they were holding in their hands, and I managed to explain to Dad that it's a slide, and they wear it on one of their fingers, and it makes that moaning, crying sound like the human voice. And we both thought, wow, that's amazing, you know. And that was the beginning. That's how it all started. Yeah.
And from there, pretty soon, this was you.
Yeah.
So what guitar was that?
It was at the time. Buying American guitars there was something going on where importing them was tricky. The duties were too high or something. So we imported a lot of guitars from Eastern Europe. And that was a Romanian electric guitar based on a semi-hollow Gibson, and it was an absolute dog.
Looks nice, huh?
The frets were concave, you know, not they were the wrong way, you know. Yeah. One pickup worked, but it wouldn't stay. Anyway, but you know, I didn't know, did I? I thought it was great. You know, yeah. So it was damned hard work, yeah.
But then you persevered, and here, I believe, was your first band.
That's correcto.
With Kevin on the right.
Yeah, that's me on there with that dog of a guitar. So I think I was maybe 15 here. Girls on the front. I was at primary school with them. Yeah, this is a local band in Bamber Bridge, The Link. And they all had jobs. They all worked at Leyland Motors, and they came. We used to meet up at the Coffee Bean in Bamber Bridge, and we rehearsed in the basement where that picture was taken before. And they knocked on my back door, and my dad answered the door. I said, "What the bloody hell's this lot doing here?" You know. And they said, "Is Kevin in?" "Oh, Kevin, what's going on?" Well, they'd come round to ask my mum and dad if I could join their band, you see. So they were horrified, you know. But they knew I was keen, and they knew it was something that I was very passionate about. So, and my dad, in fact, ended up driving me to a lot of gigs, and he'd wait outside for the whole show and bring me home with that guitar and that little amp there too, yeah.
And then next we could see... a few years and a lot of hair later, this is you with
Bridget Tickner.
And where were you playing?
So I was at that time. I'd moved on. I'd been to Foundation Art College, and then I went to Dartington Hall to do a course that would enable me to teach in the end. And Bridget walked in one day. Sat in the common room. She'd come to visit a friend of hers who was at college, pulled out a violin and started to play, and I just fell in love completely and utterly. And we ended up going around Europe, busking around all the cafes, you know, on the streets, and ended up at Salvador Dali's house. We were both huge fans of his. There we go. I realised then, you know, that, wow, this is going to be great, because just being able to do this means I can travel. And you don't need a big amount of capital to get, because once you get there, you can earn a living. Yeah.
And so then, from these humble beginnings, then you ended up, as I say, recording your album for Chrysalis Records, and one of the songs that you recorded on that was dedicated to that man Hollis Brown, who you'd met and worked for in Austin.
Yeah.
Hard-working man.
Hard-working man. He was such an inspiration. Yeah. Hollis Baker.
Hollis Baker,
yeah,
sorry.
It's this one. It's okay, man.
Yeah.
Or is it? No, is it? No, it's that one. Yeah, it is that one, yeah.
Yeah. And this is the man, Hollis Baker. I think that's him in his younger days, isn't it? Probably
very much so.
Before you met him.
I contacted one of his sons when I worked for him in '84. His sons were 16 and 18, I think. They now run the business, and I was desperate to get some pictures of Hollis, how he looked when I worked for him. He was such a character, a lot of lifelines on his face. He chewed tobacco. He always wore a hat and big cowboy boots, you know. And again, it was what was so cool about Hollis was that if you worked for somebody who puts their money where their mouth is, you know, and just treats you as a human being, at the end of the week, he would pay everybody in the sign shop. There'd be Mexicans and people like me. And he said, Karen, come up. And he had these stairs up to his office, and you walk up the stairs and you sit down, boy. And he said, he said, you've had a good week, blah, 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 you know. I like the way you clean the shop every day, thank you, appreciate that very much. And he'd just give you the, I think it was $5 an hour, but then he'd give you a bonus, depending on how, you know, your attitude during the week. So, everybody was so cool and so nice because they wanted that bonus, you know. Yeah.
So here we have a hard-working man.
Do we? Gosh, blimey, cross your fingers.
Through the dark, your light will shine.
you don't mind doing what you can. When the one you're working for is hard work. You know you don't mind doing what you can. When the one you're working for is hard work.
Oh, what's next?
Well, here's next here. These are some of the musicians that you worked with on that album for Chrysalis. Tell me a little bit about them.
So, that was Time Marches On.
Yeah.
That's right. This was the record that Chrysalis funded. And I got a publishing deal as well. So I had a record company advance and a publishing deal. And a producer this time. Yeah, I actually went to a man called Peter Van Hook. Originally, I wanted, because I got this deal, so you know I had a bit of authority really. I wanted him to drum on it. He was working with Van Morrison. I saw Peter Van Hook at Nebworth with Van Morrison. He was marvellous. He said, "No, I won't produce it." He said, "But Kevin, I'll tell you what, I won't drum on it." He said, "But I'll produce it for you. And don't worry about the drummers. I know every good drummer in the country." And he did. So he put together such a fantastic band. So that's Pete Thomas on the left on drums, who was with Elvis Costello. It's Paul Carrack in the middle, a Yorkshireman, a Sheffield Wednesday supporter. Paul Carrack's, Living Years, and How Long, wasn't it? That remember How Long? What a great record. I couldn't believe he was playing. So he played Hammond and piano on this record. And my superb, coolest, dudest buddy, Mickey Feet on bass. Mickey came up to Bath when I approached David Lord here about making that very first demo. And Mickey came up with a drummer, a friend of mine in London, Les Binks. Mickey and Les. Mick didn't know me. He said, "Yeah, I'll come up. I'll help him out." And so I got Mickey back when there was a bit of money around, Yeah. Great, that was such a good record. Yeah.
But it wasn't without its problems, because the one problem you said you had was the pressure of the big advance and the expectations, and what it did for your writing music.
Well, it changed my life. For a start, I had some income, and I didn't have to go out schlepping around the country and pay a band. I could stay. I think I've just got married as well. So it was like almost slippers on time, pipe. It was wonderful. But I kind of lost the plot a little bit. And I think, well, I could, like Rust was so Austin-centric and I was so excited and my travels had taken me all over, which enabled me to write all the things on Rust. But here I was. Where was I then? I was in Grosvenor Place, top floor flat, newly married. I had everything in the world. I didn't know what to write about. Honestly, it was awful.
So you ended up collaborating?
We started. Well, because I had a publishing deal, the publishers were really keen on sharing their writers and introducing them to each other, and that was great. And that's when things started to happen. And I also met a fellow songwriter in Bath called Phil Crowther, who was one with the original band in Bristol called The Deep. So Phil and I worked on 2 songs, and then I met, my publishing company introduced me to Alvin Lee, so I wrote Dallas with him, and it'll come back to me. But I also they introduced me to a man who I didn't know much about, and we got in touch, and I arranged to pick him up at Bath Spa railway station. His name was Roger Cook. he wrote, I'd like to teach the world to sing, and loads of stuff that wasn't really on my horizon, you know. And so I expected this dynamo and I got to Bath railway station, there was nobody there. And I hung around and kept driving around, you know, and then I kept noticing this like tramp with a plastic bag with a little ukulele neck sticking out of the plastic bag, and that was him. He'd been there all the time, and that was Roger Cook. And we became really great mates, and we wrote, we had a good time, and we wrote Trouble Ahead.
Well, shall we listen to a little bit of Trouble
No,
Ahead?
not yet. I'm finished.
Okay.
What else did we write? One of Those Nights. Is to, yes, let's listen. This is still relevant today, this song.
Absolutely.
And I think it really shows. You know, I've always loved. One of the beauties of being in control and not being with a label is that you can do what you want. You can just so. I loved writing songs that mixed everything together. You know, all my loves. You know, my ska, my reggae, and my blues, and my gospel, and Southern Streets. I think was a great example of that one. And I think this is another one. There's a pretty cool groove on this one. Yeah, if it plays, of course.
So, you ended up...
Henry Spinetti, that was on drums. Yeah.
You ended up with a great album there.
Sure did.
And what happened next then?
Don't ask. Let me think. Wait a minute. How did it work out? We knew we'd made a great record. We knew that I was going to be busy because they wanted, you know, the more you're out there working, performing, so the more records you're going to sell. So the record company's really keen on for you to get out there and, you know, tour England, Europe, and so forth. So we decided that I would there and then take a break. My wife at the time, we went to the Gambia, and we had 2 weeks to prepare myself for this intense period of work that we were going to return to. We had a lovely time. And there's another story. Well, in fact, there was another album that came out of that, wasn't it? The Core, which is in the next Core Blues, yeah. Which, wow, God, too many stories. So I came home after 2 weeks, fully refreshed, and my manager Richard rang me. He said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Oh dear, that doesn't sound too good." I said, "What's up now?" You know, he said, "Well, Chrysalis have been bought out by EMI. And EMI have been through the entire Chrysalis artist roster and their catalogue, and they don't want you." Yeah, so it's me and Paul Carrack and Sam Brown. We got sacked amongst a whole load of others. The record was shelved. Okay. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And the thing is, because I had money for the first time in my life, so I almost stopped working.
I'd almost stopped gigging because I didn't have to. So I'd lost all those contacts. I was really, really back to square one. But also, and I hadn't been working with a band because I'd been in the studio. It was pretty tough.
And who was it who came to your rescue again?
Oh, bless him. So Joe Boyd came back to me. He said, "Oh, sorry to hear about this, Kev." He said, "But maybe I can help you in a little way." He's on my records I made for Joe. I always put an acoustic slide track, no vocals, just one instrumental on each album. And he always loved those, Joe. He said, "Well, would you make me a record just like that, with no singing?" Not that I don't like singing, he said. I said, "Yeah, sure, anything, give me something to do." So, bless his little cotton socks, yeah. He gave me a budget. I recorded it with Steve Smith in his studio. Steve Smith plays piano on this. So Steve and I did it together. Steve lives in Ringwood. He's got a 24-track studio in Ringwood. Because there wasn't a big budget, typical Joe, So I knew I had to do it like myself, really. Play bass and rhythm and slide, ukulele and so forth. And I chose Steve's studio in Ringwood, and I knew Steve was a great Hammond and a great keyboard player. So Steve embellished every track with his superb musicianship. What's next? Where am I?
You're still in it.
I'm still here, am I?
Could you sing us a song?
Who's that?
Play us a song.
Is that me?
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Could you, I think one of the songs, Jessica's Kingdom, has a special place in your heart.
Yeah. So we had our baby daughter, Jessica, and I had no albums to promote, so I came off the road and I became a house husband, enabling my wife at the time to pursue her career up at the university. And whenever Jess was sleeping, you know what it's like when they're really, really young. As soon as they sleep, you just, what can I do? I need to do something. So I just used to play, and I used to play to make her go to sleep. Sleep, and this came out of those sessions.
Well, could we?
I think we can. So this is Jessica's Kingdom. As I would look at her in her little corduroy cot there on the floor, she was gone with the fairies, and she was off wandering around her kingdom, and that's how I used to imagine her thoughts at the time where she would be.
She's 28 now. Yeah, just finished a drinking degree at Cardiff University. God, that was it. Where was that? That park where they have all those swimming pools and Longleat. Longleat, no. They've got indoor swimming pools in it, so it's not far. Central Park, yeah, that's right. Yeah, she used to love it there. We all did, yeah. What's happening?
Well, you finished the album, Sunny Side Up.
Oh, Sunny Side Up, yeah.
And how did it go?
Oh, great. It sounded fantastic. Really, really pleased with it. And came back because we were still trying to sell Time Marches On. You know, we were still trying to turn that around. I had a phone call from Joe Boyd. He said, Kevin, are you sitting down? I went, oh no, you must be joking, Joe. He said, no, I'm not. He said, I've just sold a company to Ryco Disc. Oh, thanks, Joe. And they don't want the record. Oh, shit. So, that was the end of that. That's another 2 years' work, you know. The writing and then the recording. He said, but leave it with me, I've got an idea, I've got a plan. Let's see if we can make this work for you. And I had a message from him not long after. And he said, just go ahead, get it pressed up. Get it printed, get all the sleeves done. Leave it with me. Send the invoices to me. So just before he actually signed his contract with Ryco Disc, he put the invoice in for the cost of pressing up Sunny Side Up. And 2 weeks later, I got 1,000 free CDs of Sunny Side Up, and I've still got quite a lot left. So bless him, love him to death. It all, behind all these upsets and stuff, there's always good that comes out. For example, the very first one, picking good tunes that came out was the result of me having the freedom to not have to release the ones that we'd recorded at Ridge Farm, which I didn't like. So that was a great thing. And what was the at the Chrysalis thing? Oh no. So yeah. So this one I got 1,000 free CDs. So great. I would settle for that.
And really, as you say, from all of those experiences, this kind of made you come to the decision that maybe it is better to do it on your own.
Yeah.
And this was the result.
Yeah.
Home studio.
Yeah.
In
Belgrave Road.
Belgrave Road.
Yeah. Top floor flat. Well, I knew if I was going to do this thing, if I was going to extricate myself from record labels and losing control, there's no way I could afford to go into studios with a band and do all that promotion stuff. So there's only one way forward, and that was to make a solo record, just me. So the way to do that, I was really into, always been into early Delta blues, and I loved that intimacy that I used to get with some of those artists. I thought, if I could make a record like that, where I feel that, because I'd listened to these solo artists all my life, like Son House and Booker White and
Charlie Patton and Robert Johnson, you have such a close relationship with them. When you're sitting in a room listening to just an artist with a guitar and a voice, they become your mates, and they're your salvation, you know. And the way that you turn to them, I thought, oh, wow, that must be. So that was my ambition, you know. I bought a Revox stereo tape recorder, reel to reel. I had a cassette recorder there on the bottom, and a DAT machine, and I borrowed a BBC microphone, a Coles ribbon microphone, to make the recordings. But that was it. That was all I had, and that's where I made Mohave Dust. Yeah.
And this was the result.
Yeah.
Mohave Dust, which I believe got you some of the best reviews of your career.
Isn't that amazing? You know, the cheapest record I ever made, the quickest. Well, it took like a couple of years to write it, and it came to the ears of Mark Knopfler, and he was absolutely raving about it. And we became friends, and he later invited me to go and work with him, and so forth. Yeah, great record.
And you've got one of my favourite songs on it. No, you don't have to play it, don't worry. Into the Stone.
Oh,
We're going to
yeah.
listen to the recorded version of one that you recorded in your home studio with a little selection of photos from your life.
Oh, yes, Mum and
with your
Dad.
parents and your mum and dad.
Yeah. It's their honeymoon in Morecambe.
Right, and this photo that we've seen before, viewing the link, there's another link here of you and this friend who's been operating the slideshows, Stuart Fides. And I believe that the blazer you're wearing is the thing that brought the two of you together.
It certainly is. So, we lived on separate estates in Bamberbridge.
I lived in Watley Dale.
Watley Dale, that's right, it was in Bamberbridge.
Bamberbridge was a bit down market.
And of course, all we did all day was play football out in the street, and this guy came through our estate, whizzing through on a bike with the most amazing jacket, because the Who had just come out, and they were, and I thought, God, that's, and I thought, oi, where did you get that jacket from? And he stopped and he told me, and blah, we became friends, and I told him about the band, and he allowed me to wear it on this gig, you know. Because he never got it back, basically. And but it was dead cool at the time, I can tell you. So, and we've remained friends ever since. And he's here tonight, Mr. Stuart Fides. Can we have a round for Stuart?
He was with you on another notable occasion up in London.
Yeah.
When you were busking on Portobello Road.
Yeah, that's right.
And this man here became part of the story. Maybe you could tell us about
So I lived in Bamberbridge, which is right next to the M6, going down to London. So it was really easy to get around because everybody hitchhiked then, and you could go anywhere you liked really. And my favourite thing was just to stick my thumb out, head down to London, and just bus wherever I could. And we both went one year, got a lift really quickly. We managed to get to Portobello Road, which is my favourite busking spot, by about midday. And got my guitar out. Did I have which guitar? Oh, that was the wooden one, yeah, the National. I was really excited about this instrument because I'd always wanted a steel guitar, a National steel guitar. And I put an advert in the local paper, and somebody rang up and said, oh, I've got one of them. Oh, what? How much do you want for it? Oh, a couple of quid. What? I said, okay. So we shot round there, and this guy had just had all his teeth out. His mum answered the door, and she showed me into the kitchen, and there, with its back to me in the corner, was this wooden guitar. I went, oh no, he's thought I meant a wooden blah. Anyway, I went up and turned it on, and it was a National resonator, a troubadour, I can't remember exactly. Yeah, so it cost me a couple of pounds. And I used to take that to London busking. And so we set off one day, got to Portobello Road, 12 o'clock, started busking, and a guy came up to me, he said, tall bloke. He had an American accent, so I was quite impressed with that. He said, hey, that sounds pretty good, boy. He said, do you know any songs about Son House? I said, you must be joking, mate. It's a nightmare, you know, because Son House is a legendary Delta blues musician, but he's impossible to imitate or copy or learn from because his style is so idiosyncratic. It's mental, okay? I said, you know, no, I don't, but I am trying. You know, I still listen to it every night and blah, blah. He said, oh, that's a shame. I said, well, why is that? He said, well, he's standing right behind me. And he was there. And he held out his hand, and, you know, we exchanged gratitudes and so forth. And then the first guy asked me, his name was Dick Waterman. He said to me, look, I don't know if you could do me a favour. He loves what you're doing. Maybe you could, I need to go and take care of some business, and I don't want to drag Son around. He said, could you look after him, pay house for him, you know, for the afternoon? And we were together then, you know, Stuart witnessed everything. So we found a little bar, and we sat with Son House all afternoon, and he signed my guitar, and we talked.
He gave you some important advice?
He did, yeah, because he'd heard me singing, you know, songs with traditional blues lyrics, which I knew nothing about. I could not relate to these songs whatsoever. And he said, you need to speak, have your own voice, say your own thing, and then you'll get the idea. And I did, and that sowed the seed of me becoming a songwriter. And yet, having both those things, my love of the blues and becoming a songwriter, ended up in where I am today, and that's the whole deal really for me.
And so that album, Mohave Dust, they were all your own songs, except for one, which was a song by one of Sandhouse's prodigies.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to the beginning of the evening, Robert Johnson.
Yeah.
Here we have a mural of Robert Johnson, which shows him in flames, which was very much part of his image of having sold his soul to the devil and writing songs like "Devil That Got My Woman." But actually, he was a very human young guy.
Sweetheart.
Yeah.
Everybody that he met loved him. The women obviously loved him to death. He was a very, very happy, full of energy kind of guy. He was almost a poet savant, because nobody his age had ever made noises like he made. And he hadn't been playing guitar for that long, but yet it was so mature. He was only 21. So mature. No, he was 17, I think, or 18 when he first started performing. Born in Robinsonville, born on a plantation. The first years of his life was spent on his mother's back while she picked cotton. And obviously that's not the kind of life that you're going to enjoy. So he did the best he could to try and get out of it, really, yeah.
I think the song you're going to play is Travelling Riverside Blues.
Travelling Riverside Blues, and this features certain destinations in Mississippi that Stuart and I went and paid our dues many years ago. Places like Friars Point.
I think while you sing it, we're going to see a little selection of photographs that you and Stuart took.
Okay, yes. So I got to that place and I played for my supper and we became friends and ended up living there and working there. And I've always liked photography. So okay, I'll just sit and play for them.
Yeah.
God damn.
Gets personal, you want to have some fun. If your man gets personal, you want to have some fun. Go down to Friars Point, you can barrel house there all night long. I'm going down to Rosedale to take a nap, right by my side. I'm going down to Rosedale to take a nap, right by my side. You can barrel house there because it's by the riverside. I'm going down to Vicksburg, clean on down to Tennessee. Going down to Vicksburg.
Tennessee. Another man got my woman, the blues got me. Lord, you wanna have some fun. If your man gets personal, you wanna have some fun. Go down to Vicksburg and Friars Point, you can barrel house all, barrel house all, barrel house all night.
So, now, what does the future hold for you?
Oh. Well, I'm going to go back to where I go every winter and have been going for the last 20 years, apart from the COVID period that we've just been through. I like to switch the heat off and go and join all my Frisbee friends in South Goa. And that's where I'll be heading next weekend for 3 months. And that's the kind of life I will lead out there. It's very, very simple, very basic. So I'll have a room with a bed and a sink and a toilet, and on that bed will be a book, my guitar and my Frisbee, and just a few clothes on the table next to the window, which is next to the door. And you open that door and you're straight out onto the beach, and that's where I'll be. So I am blessed completely.
Well, makes you a lucky man.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Kevin.
My pleasure.
For all of the stories and for all of the music.
And thank you so much. You know, Matthew has really helped instigate this, and it's been so helpful, and he's put a lot of these slideshows together. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Matthew. And thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Stuart, as well on this.
Thank you. And now we have some time. I don't know, Tim, how much time. I don't have my watch with me.
We've got time for a couple of questions.
Okay, we've got time for a few questions. Does anybody have any questions for Kevin?
Perhaps I can kick you off with a comment rather than a question. Just a very nice feedback to Kevin for this evening. Sunhouse, Robert Johnson, Muddy, Ry Cooder, Lowell George all have their distinctive sound. So have you, old friend. We have always been fans, and that's from Fancy and Annette. So I think that's probably shared with a number of people in the room. So thank you very much, Kevin, on their behalf.
Oh, bless them.
Are there any questions in the room?
Any questions?
Didn't my friend, yes, go on, Nick.
I saw photos there of Andy Davis and wonderful Stuart Gordon. When I saw you with them, you were playing Hawaiian style.
Yeah.
I still hear a little
Yeah.
Hawaiian notes in there, but aren't in my blues scale.
So that band, Five Guys Named Mo, that played in the Bell
Yeah.
every Sunday night, was a result of my trip to Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
And hearing Western swing and gospel and so forth, and hearing bands like that. So when I came back to Bath, I said, my God, if I can put something together that reflects all these genres in such a beautiful way, and that's what I did. And I was so lucky to find Eric Scott and Stuart Gordon, bless him,
Sure, yeah.
R.I.P. And Andy Davis, who's still here in Walcott Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a great
Thanks
night.
very much.
Really lovely night.
Oh, thank you, Rick. They were great days, eh? Yeah, it was we made a record actually, which I've still got a couple of copies, in Malcolm El Camus. Do you remember we used to do that one night? Yeah. Ian, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a question. Well, I'm kind of just making it up as I go along, but I think when you first went to Austin and you talked about the freedom and space and what it was like to be a young man there, and do you remember, can you say anything more about that, the confidence that you had and the freedom that you felt, and when you reflect back, what take you have on it now and how you feel about the future in relation to that?
Thank you. Well, I'll tell you a really important ingredient to my happiness and my contentment in Austin. A lot of it came down to the guitar that I had, because I was now travelling with a purpose-built instrument that I could plug in to PA systems, which is the Ovation guitar. I bought that guitar in England, and before I had that guitar, I had a Martin D35, and I used to put a microphone in front of it and try to survive in pubs. It was a nightmare. And then Ovation came out with this instrument, and that enabled so many of us to go out and begin to earn a living. And that was one of my secrets of my success in Austin, that I had this instrument that could go anywhere and plug it in and do exactly the same thing, and so I could practice on it as well as actually use it when I was going out. And also the friendliness of everybody. I wasn't used to being in a town where the majority of people were musicians. So it had well, you can imagine, can't you, how much I was going to learn, and how many new friends I was going to make. You get the picture, and yeah. And that's why Rust is such an interesting record, I think, because of that. And meeting Hollis too was really special, very special. Is that all right, Ian?
Yeah, no, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there are, if anybody's interested, there's a selection of Kevin's CDs here. Most of them, well, they're priced either £5 or £10. £10 if they're a digipack or a case, £5 for the others. So if you'd like to take a look, and Kevin would be happy to sign any that you buy. And I think if there are no more questions, I think that's all for today, except could we ask you to sing one more song for us before the end of the evening? Possibly the title song of the evening, Lucky Man?
Okay. God, I've got so... I'm right at the end at the moment of a huge writing batch, and I've got so many new songs. I'm a lucky man. I don't cry. Lord, I'm lucky. I don't cry. Sometimes I wonder how some folks survive. I'm a lucky man. I've got what I need. I'm a lucky man. I've got what I need. Sometimes I wonder how some folks succeed. I got food
food on the table, roof on my head, shoes on my feet, pillow on my bed. I'm lucky. I've had an easy life. Sometimes I wonder how some folks I'm a lucky man. I got everything I need. Lord, I'm lucky. I've got everything I need. Sometimes I wonder how some folks succeed. Lord, I'm